SwayamPrabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everyone, welcome back to online NPTEL certification course on research methodology for planning and architectural studies. Today we'll be discussing the lecture number 3, which titled Qualitative versus Quantitative Research. In our previous lecture, what we have understood that the type of research, like starting from the action research to the applied research, fundamental research to the empirical research, but this is very common questions among the researcher, that what is qualitative and what is quantitative research, and obviously there are certain confusion. And today what we are going to learn from this lecture is a clear definition of what is qualitative research, advantage of qualitative research and its application area, approaches to qualitative research, different way by which we can do that qualitative research, and then we move to the quantitative research, its definition, advantage of applying quantitative research in our domain, especially in planning and architecture, and approaches to quantitative research. And after that we'll summarize our learning. So let's get started with qualitative research. So as we discussed in the previous lecture as well, that the qualitative research involves collecting and analyzing non-numerical data. So mostly in that case we collect data through text, we collect data through video, audio to understand participants' perception. You may also use the questionnaire to understand the perception and also capture the behavior or the experience. So in this case, this is something where we are calculating something with the non-numerical data. If we try to understand further different characteristics of qualitative research, yes, it actually used or collect some in-depth insight or information which will generate to some new ideas, okay, for the research. It also answers how and why instead of how many and how much. So this is very important. So in this case definitely we are not quantifying, but at the same time we will try to understand through qualitative research that how it is happening and why it is happening. It has ability to explain the processes and the patterns of human behavior. Sometimes it is very difficult to quantify. So whenever we say something like your experience, okay, your comfort condition within a gathering, or maybe your comfort condition within a congested bus, so it is very tough to quantify. In such cases we can take some kind of qualitative labels to define it. Say it is too much, it is okay, all right, I'm satisfied. So all this kind of satisfaction, then maybe if we go for some kind of important study, that how much it is important. So all such cases, like, we can take help of this qualitative research. A qualitative research also allows participant to explain how, why and what they are thinking, feeling and experiencing. So it can be open-ended or it can be a close-ended questionnaire survey kind of approach. Now when you go and just interact, that tell me something about the current issue of climate change or global warming, you just interact with certain expert and then try to understand what are the key consideration, or maybe you can also ask that what they think about the reasons for such kind of change in the climate, or which causes the global warming. So you can then try to understand from those answers. And in this case particular, what you are trying to capture is that expert opinion, expert thing. Here you are not quantifying exactly the changes and other thing. It also focuses on obtaining data through open-ended and conversational communication. So mostly qualitative approach is like open-ended, but again, as I already mentioned, you can also make a structured questionnaire, but there you are not quantifying, you are just observing and trying to find out the pattern. So example, like a survey to understand public opinions on a new policy. So suppose a new policy come into picture, whether maybe you can take example of the e-vehicle policy, zero carbon mission, or such kind of policy which like people think can bring a positive change, or maybe it will have a negative consequences. So you just interact and try to understand that impact of that new policy, the public opinion on it, using participatory method to involve communities in identifying and addressing social concerns. So in this case also, like one of the method that we'll also discuss under qualitative research, that we go for a public participation survey. So where we make a particular focus group, or maybe we just call some people to discuss about certain changes or certain strategy that you develop, and try to understand that how much it is acceptable or that can be adaptable by the people for whom you are designing or you are giving that particular solution. The other example, analyzing storytelling as a method to capture indigenous knowledge related to the land use management. So in this case, sometimes even if it is not the opinion survey, but you have gone through the entire history, or you just review such kind of manuscript and try to understand that how people in an indigenous way try to manage the land. So this is another type of qualitative assessment where you cannot quantify, but you can see the changes. It can be something, some temporal changes, it can be some spatial changes that you can measure. Documenting and preserving cultural heritage through qualitative assessment of a historic city, that we also discussed earlier, that suppose in a city where you have certain kind of historical monuments, there are certain kind of tangible heritage, and you want to like document it, and you want to understand the role of those kind of heritage in people's culture, or in people's perception, how they like think, or how they showcase their belongingness to those kind of heritage and the value. So that can be done through the qualitative research approach. So moving towards the clear cut advantages of qualitative research, as I already discussed this point, that in depth understanding. In this particular case, you are going for a in depth understanding, and you go for an open ended approach. You don't fix up some of the questions that you think is very pertinent, and you just try to understand the answer from the participant. So in this case, you get some more insightful idea. So if you interact with that, some new ideas which may not be possible in a structured questionnaire. So maybe you can miss out some important points, but that can be captured in such kind of interview. So it is very well suited for gaining understanding of social, cultural and behavioral aspects. So mostly for behavioral aspect, these are very useful tool, the qualitative approach. But it doesn't mean that you cannot apply the quantitative research method in terms of capturing the behavioral aspect. That can be, I'll also talk about that in our subsequent discussion. The other advantage, flexibility. The qualitative research gives researcher some kind of freedom to adjust their approach, method and focus based on emerging insight. So in this case, it is not very fixed. So here you have that particular freedom, and in this case, that's why it is something can involve like evolve with the nature of research that you are performing. Coming next, it is also giving you some sort of advantage in terms of exploration. So exploratory nature, often exploratory research that we require to explore the new things which can give you a fresh idea. So in this case also, it is going to give you some kind of uncover unexpected pattern or relationship. which will be the backbone of further investigation. So at least at this, in a qualitative way, you can just observe that there is a new phenomena, there is a new pattern, or there is a new kind of area or avenue that you want to investigate more. And other part of this particular qualitative research is the useful for small sample size. So for qualitative, as because it is much more focus group discussion, something on the opinion, so researcher can gain meaningful insight from relatively small number of participant, because in this case we are going for an in-depth data collection. It's not few questions that we ask here, like if you go for some kind of interview and all, you just try to find out from the recording, their even through their body language and all, that what kind of information that is evolving out of discussion. Then its applicability to the emerging field, as already I have told in the previous point, that it is very much helpful for exploratory research. It is at the same time it is very useful for the emerging field, where you can apply this kind of method to get the first hand result, okay, which will be like some new emerging field, or the field where there are very limited literature available with you. Qualitative research is very instrumental for theoretical development. So this is also required. And again, if you ask me about that, what to pick, like qualitative or quantitative, or should we go for a combined one or a mixed method, so answer is not very straightforward. Depending on the research purpose, you may require both of them. Maybe one of your objective is very much fit into the qualitative research approach, the other one maybe you need the quantitative one. So depending on the nature of the research and all, we have to pick it up. So here are the advantages of the qualitative research. Now coming to the approaches, so here I have given very broad few approaches by which you can conduct the qualitative research. One is the grounded theory. So in this particular case, what is happening, it is a generation of a theoretical model through the experience of observing a study population and developing a comparative analysis of their speech and behavior. So in this case, is basically you have to just understand the people's behavior, you interact with them and try to find out the phenomena, that okay, for a region that people they think in that way, like say for example, you take some example of disaster resilience, okay, then how people preparedness of that particular resilience, so you can interact with them and then you can get certain idea about that. In this case, researcher collect rich data on a topic of interest and develop theory inductively. So it's the first hand research that I already mentioned. The grounded theory also aims to generate theories and concepts based on systematic analysis of data, but again it is not like a quantifying the data. It is well suited for exploring social processes and understanding the perspective and experience of individual. So in social science it is very much important. So any new strategy you will come up with, or maybe you just propose a new solution for betterment of any particular region, so there will be some sort of perception associated with that, so we can capture that. Next approach can be of ethnographic research. In this case, it is the direct involvement of the researcher with the target population. Rather than just interacting, it is much more of observing the phenomena. You be there, you observe the activity the people they do in their daily life, you observe that their activity pattern throughout, and then try to map it, that okay, this is what is happening. So this research design aims to understand the culture, challenges, motivation and setting that occur in a particular system. Instead of relying on interview and discussion, in this case researcher experience the natural settings firsthand. So many a times, as a researcher, we were told that okay, you have to do some data collection, okay, and then out of that data collection you have to generate certain kind of graph, some tables, etc. It's not always true that only there is one way to doing that particular thing. So if you want to apply this ethnographic thing, approach for a qualitative research, then that can also be very much useful, where you observe people's behavior without interacting with them, capture. So maybe you want to do some sort of estimation that how people they behave in a market area. So what are their roles, like how they move and what is their pattern and other thing. So in this case you can observe, you be there through some kind of observation, through photography, through videography, you can understand their phenomena. Next is definitely the interview, which is one to one interview. It is a personal interview that is carried out with one respondent at a time. So this is something very common and useful, but in this case definitely this can be applied in a quantitative manner as well, where you ask some certain sort of quantitative questions, and here it is much more of the experience or their behavior, so which is like much more of qualitative in nature. So in this case it is a conversational method and invites opportunity to get into that details from the respondent, that when you ask those kind of questions, it can be like a very structured questionnaire, it can be also something unstructured open ended questionnaire. So you also add certain observations from the respondent, and then you can modify your questionnaire accordingly. So normally we do in our research, we call something called pilot study or pilot testing of the questionnaire. So that means you first develop the questionnaire and then you just survey few people to understand whether the each of the questions that is being asked in the questionnaire is meaningful, or is there any such kind of issues that the respondent are facing. So on that note you have to modify it, and then after modification again you go for a full-fledged final survey. So in this case, this interview can be performed face to face or over phone or online. So this is something where nowadays we have multiple way of conducting the interview, but previously it was much more on the paper based interview, where you go for a face to face interview. Nowadays you can take help of the online thing, but based on my experience what I can tell you, that still in Indian scenario the face to face interview is much better than the online, because for online you cannot have control and you cannot understand the people's body language on that. So that's why I have mentioned here, in case of face to face interview it gives better opportunity for the researcher to read respondent body language. That is also important, that it's not abruptly or randomly they are giving certain responses and they tick in some of the options without understanding the questions, because when it is face to face interview, if respondents will have certain doubt, can get it clarified from the surveyor or the researcher, but in online it is difficult. In such case you have to design your questionnaire in such a way in online mode that it will have some kind of help text or help audio. Now moving back to this particular next approach, that is the focus group. So in this case it is not one to one, we invite a group of people together, and then the focus group are a type of qualitative research that bring together a small group of people representing target audience. So here also focus group, it's not like very say random, we can keep anyone from any particular group. Here also there are certain selection, there should be some sampling technique that we will discuss in other presentation in detail, and then that small group will be the representative of the entire audience, or maybe you can say it is something like the entire population for whom like we are discussing. The main aim of the focus group is to find the answer why something is happening, what, and then how. So these are the common questions in qualitative research, and it is coming again and again on that. The purpose of focus group is to have a relaxed open-ended conversation to gain insight that may not be possible from a survey to an individual one. So in focus group discussion, normally there will be a moderator, or the researcher can also take the same role and discuss different issues and take the opinion of different people. Okay, so in some cases maybe two members in that focus group may differ to a particular you know strategy or particular point, and then further discussion can solve it out that okay, so there will be a common understanding that what is exactly and what possible the reason, or maybe what is the phenomena of the given questions that were asked by the researcher. Now, apart from those four, there are other few approaches of qualitative research. One is the case study based research. In this case, it is something that where you go for an in-depth examination of a case or some instances, often involving multiple source of data to gain insight into a complex phenomena. So suppose you want to investigate something on the blue green infrastructure and its role on climate change mitigation. So if for particular case you can do some kind of case studies, okay, a good practices across the globe, and try to understand that what exactly they have done to mitigate it and how much they have been succeeded in that particular process. So by that you can figure out that these are the gray areas, or these are the points where like people they focused more, or these are the areas where they have there is not much research. So for such kind of cases, like you can derive those kind of research gaps. So this case study based research is also a good approach for qualitative research. We can also go for narrative analysis. In this case, definitely analyzing and interpreting stories, narratives shared by participant, we can also understand that. So again, it is not very much structured questionnaire. We can go with the narrative. It may be phenomenological research, where it will like explore and describe the life experience of the individual to uncover the essence of particular phenomena. So in this case, it is something based on experience, that something happened in a particular place, and then you go and conduct certain sort of interview, open ended interview, and ask people the experience, and you try to figure it out. Visual research method is also nowadays very common, where you can use the photograph, video, or drawings as a primary source of data. So when we talk about the ethnographic part, there also you can apply such kind of techniques. Document analysis, here examining and interpreting the document, text, artifacts to gain insight, and you can get some kind of cultural and organization context of it. So suppose you are doing something on that historical monuments or something, in such cases you can also look at different documents that being published, some research on the age of that monument, or maybe the historical essence of that monument, so that you can do. Other is that biographical research. In this case, definitely you study the individual's life story and trajectories to understand, and the influence of personal on the social factors. So this is something also you sometimes can give you some motivation. So normally, in some cases, like where people are doing something on this theory development and other things, so this will be much more pertinent to that. Now with that, now we move to the quantitative research. As we already discussed earlier, that is explore and investigate the phenomena that can be expressed in terms of quantity. So quantification is the key of the quantitative research. So in this case, definitely the some of the characteristics is the systematic investigation of the phenomena by gathering quantifiable data and performing statistical, mathematical, or computational techniques. So in this case, we need certain statistical tools, softwares, etc., mathematical modeling to find out that particular result. Empirical research method, definitely where we deal with the data and the number, mainly with the systematic collection of the data and interpretation of numerical data. So this is both are equally important, because it's not only you collect data, but after collecting data, refining the data, preparation of your database, then analyzing it with a suitable statistical method, and finally interpreting, because that is something, if you interpret it wrongly, even if the process is all right, then it will lead to a different decision which will be harmful in some, for the research purpose. The aim is to quantify and analyze relationship, pattern and trend. So it may be something when you go for a correlation type of research, that you want to understand the association of two variables, or impact of temperature on rainfall, or impact of rainfall on the urban flash flood. So all such kind of cases, you go for some kind of establishing the correlation and other thing, or it may be the trend analysis that you can do. This type of research often used test the hypothesis, identify the cause and effect relationship, and make prediction as well, which is very important, that what is going to be. This is nowadays like in planning and architecture, we are doing such kind of experiment, that we know with the change in the climate and frequent flood scenario, that in next 30 years, how we can see the sea level getting up or down, or maybe what could be the change in the prospective climate and all, and accordingly you make certain strategy out of it. For example, like these are something already we discussed before. So for this, I just quickly go through that. Say for example, to analyze the traffic pattern in a busy intersection, where you go for a counting the vehicles, to assess the effectiveness of a new teaching method for improving performance, where you can test like before and after applying that particular technique, how student performed in the examination and other thing. Tourist satisfaction towards the hotel facilities at destination, there are different kind of satisfaction you can quantify. Assessing the impact of zoning regulation on property value, quantifying the demand for utilities and services to plan infrastructure upgrade. So identifying the gap in infrastructure that we discussed. Now moving forward, the advantage of quantitative research. In this case, the efficiency. In this case, the survey, experiment and structure observation can be conducted on a relatively large scale, making it practical for studying diverse population. So as because it will give you the freedom to deal with a good amount of data, and finally if you apply certain statistical tool and all, you will get some kind of insight, some meaningful results. So that's why it is quite efficient. Causality and predictability. Quantitative research is well suited for establishing cause and effect relationship. So this is very important, that there should be some hypothesis on, okay, this is the cause and this is the effect. Say for example, if we see a phenomena that pollution in most of the metropolitan cities in Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, etc. So what are the reasons? So there might be multiple reasons. It may be the industrial pollution, it may be the residential thing, or it may be something related to the traffic emission and all. So in all such cases, we try to make certain kind of cause and effect relationship, that we try to establish that regression, that how much it is actually contributing, and what is the relation between that vehicular emission then and overall pollution of a city. Ease of data analysis. In this particular case, a range of statistical techniques are available to extract the meaningful insight from the data. So we have, like, from a simple computational techniques to a complex one. Now we have so much of variety of tests available with us. Some of them are parametric tests, some of are non-parametric tests. So for parametric, non-parametric, we'll also have discussion in subsequent presentation. Applicability to a large scale survey, as already I mentioned, as because it will be dealt with certain algorithm, certain tools and techniques. So data collection on good number of data and managing that data is easy. Structured and standardized. The standardization of this is a very closed form, point to point quantifiable questions that you will ask and you observe or you collect. So for that, it is enhancing the reliability of the research process as well. So there is no such kind of guesswork that will work here. Clarity and precision, numeric values and statistical measures provide a level of precision in findings. I have given one example last lecture that uh, consulting doctor with your problem, like when you say that I am feeling some sort of feverish kind of thing, so based on symptoms doctor may prescribe you something, or else doctor may go along with the blood test report and accordingly identifying the actual cause of your temperature, body temperature rise and all, and then pinpointed medicine for that. So in such cases definitely we'll have much more you know precision and clarity, rather than just experimenting, okay I can take this and just wait for another 2 days, and then again if that is not working we will change it. So this is similar case that where quantitative research approach or quantitative techniques will give you that kind of confidence. Now coming to the approaches to quantitative research, so it may be like through the primary data collection or it may be through the secondary data collection. So for primary quantitative research methods, in this case we can go for the survey research, where surveys are used to ask question to the sample respondent using various type of options, like it can be the online polls, it can be the online survey, it can be the paper based questionnaire, or it may be a mixture of that. Also we can go for correlational research, where correlation research is conducted to establish the relationship between two closely associated entities and how one impacts other and what changes are eventually observed. So this is something very common, that say for example for any particular region, that change in population density, how it is impacting the land use or other activity in that particular city. So if you try to make that correlation, will get that particular thing. It may be directly proportionate, directly related, or inversely related in some of the cases. So we need to understand that is there any impact of population density on the water consumption. Suppose for a city we have certain assumption that per capita per day there will be some sort of supply. So that is from the supply side point of view. But if you want to do a calculation that how much water we consume, so is there any impact on the population density on the water consumption. So all such kind of cases we can go for the correlational research. Causal comparative research, in this case definitely as I mentioned earlier, here will establish the cause effect equation between two and more variables, that changing one particular parameters how other is also going to vary. So in this case definitely we'll pick up something called dependent variable, and there may be something called independent variable. So I'm taking the same example of water supply. So water consumption will depend on certain things like its number of people, its quality of water. If say municipal supply is not good, the water is not good, so definitely the consumption will be less. Or else it will also depend on your type of fixtures that you have. If you have water related fixture more, so probably then that will consume more water. Then we have something like experimental research. In this case analysis is done around provide and disproving the statement. So here we set the experiment, we have certain kind of hypothesis and then we test it. So that is something proving and disproving the fact. Now coming to this particular part where secondary quantitative research method, where you can rely on the data available on internet, or it may be you can say that it is available with the government and non-government sources, that we don't go for essential primary data collection, and from secondary data you can try to analyze it. But there is some issues with those. We'll discuss in our upcoming lectures that issues with the data, that is something very problematic to conduct further research. It may be public libraries, you go for such kind of books, journals, etc. But in today's time, the trend is like the internet is with us, and then there are various open sources, site and other thing. So where from you can get the information and use it. Educational institutions, definitely in this case, that in a educational institution there are certain kind of thesis already being there, so already like you can get access to those kind of already done research as a case study, and then you can go ahead. Commercial information sources, so this is very particular, that some commercial party is going to understand the trend of their marketing or their product sellability and all, and for that you can also get those information and do the analysis. So with that, we are summarizing today's lecture. So here we understood that what are the different characteristics of qualitative research, advantage of it, and different approaches like grounded theory, ethnographic, focus group discussion, then case study method, etc. Similarly, we also understood what is quantitative research and advantage, that much more trust on this particular approach as because it is quantifying and the result and all. Also the advantage of quantitative research and different approaches. So I hope that this will bring some clarity to you and your thought process, that which particular method is much more applicable for your current work and all, and we'll discuss in detail further this too with examples, and there I'll show you the difficulties where like you may get some kind of confusion and how to solve it out. So with that, I end it here. So these are few study material that you can go through. So our next topic is also interesting. That is something a very common confusion with research method and research methodology. With that, we'll see you soon. Thank you.